Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. Welcome back to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel. Hope we're all here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 58. Is lead gen really the Wild West? That expression, Simon, of lead gen being referred to as the Wild West, we've heard it a few times on the podcast by guests. I feel like it's popped up a few times, people often referring to lead gen in that way in a kind of facetious manner, but we've heard it enough for it to be worth discussing on this pod. So let's just do that and sort of examine what is kind of meant by that phrase, and why there is this perception of lead gen as being like the Wild West.
Yeah, so I think the perception is driven by data being or a lead being an intangible product. So you can't touch it and feel it. It feels like you only know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent after the fact. So, you've tried to market or sell to it, and then you've realized, oh no, I've been screwed over. So I think that drives the perception, which is everyone just sees data. If I say data to your people's personal data, I'm pretty sure everyone thinks of it in the same way, which is like a spreadsheet with rows of people's data on. And so to try and make sense of that when you're viewing it in that way of whether it's good or bad can feel quite difficult, I suppose. So there's this perception that you could be easily screwed over because you're dealing with this sort of ether or intangible product, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I suppose the follow-on question from that is there any truth in it, or is it like a myth?
No, yeah, I mean, there's always truth in it. So there's a few things which drive the truth behind. I mean, it's not true as in, everyone's like that carries out lead generation. But there's a truth in it, and that stems from a couple of things. So number one is there is an extremely low barrier to entry in lead generation. So whether that is you're just going to knock a landing page up in a certain vertical, so I don't know, car insurance or something, and either drive data to it or pretend that you're driving data to it and sell data to someone. And there obviously is a buyer on the back of that. And the other one is that if you're a middleman, so either an agency or a broker, it's incredibly easy to buy data. You then don't even have to generate it. You sit in the middle and you can just sell this data on. So the individuals that potentially act like the Wild West sit in those sort of spheres. And, if you're just interested in like a one-hit wonder of making a ton of money, I mean, you can easily do it. I mean, unless someone's going to carry out like due diligence, really understand like the lead buying process and ensure that what they think is happening is genuinely happening, you can easily be screwed over. But I think also it's worth pointing out at this point that it can work the other way around. So lead buyers can screw good lead generators over. So, I've known plenty of instances, I'm almost 100% sure it'll happen to me multiple times, of an order for a certain amount of leads or a product and it being sent, and then the company folding or them disappearing or whatever. So all these things in their entirety do drive this perception, like the Wild West, and it does make it true. But I think it's probably like any industry, which is, there'll be elements of lawlessness, there'll be elements of fraud and everything else. I think what can happen in lead gen is everyone wants a deal, like lead. Well, it's two things. Everyone wants a deal, so they think like cheaper is better. And so, when an offer turns up that seems too good to be true, people go after it because they'll think, I can get this at £1, and it's normally, everyone else is telling you £15. But the other thing is, and it's something we spoke about and we continue to speak about on several podcasts, is educating lead buyers. So if you're serious about buying leads and everything else, I think, I memean, I could fall prey to this sort of thing, but for me personally, I know a bunch of people are serious about like lead buying. They're going to do it. They examine this stuff to such a detail, and really look into every point. That'd be quite difficult to screw people over. So yes, there is some truth in it, but the truth is ultimately driven by people that shouldn't be buying these leads.
Okay. Yes, with a big asterisk. Is how
Yeah,
it works.
big asterisk. That's it.
The thing is, what I don't know, I might be wrong about this, but when I've heard it said before, though, I feel like people are sort of referring to it in the past tense. They're sort of saying lead gen used to be like the Wild West, maybe not so much now. Is that fair to say? Do you think things have changed slightly from? I don't know. I feel like they're talking about like 10 years ago or something. It's like used to be chaos, but now it's a bit more. Is that it heading in the direction perhaps?
Well, I think that there was sort of pre-GDPR and post-GDPR is probably what happened, because a lot of brands, especially that are serious about like the leads they're buying and carrying out their due diligence, making sure they're the right side of the law with the ICO, for example, in the UK. It sort of stopped a few of the bad actors in their tracks and some of the suspicious practices they used to carry out. I suspect now the fraud has probably slightly changed, because what we're really talking about when we're talking about that is consent, right? But the thing is, and there's something we spoke about on another podcast, this idea of consent and intent, and it comes back to data being an intangible product. So I could collect, say, I don't know, a co-sponsor lead and pass it off to you as a like a landing page that I've built as a single product that would be £15, and really I bought the lead at 15p, for example. And legally, in terms of consent, there is consent potentially for that lead to be contacted by that brand. But in terms of the contract that you have, it's something completely different. So what I suspect has happened is fraud, if and when it is being carried out, is slightly different. And secondly, I think there's less of it, just because a few of the sort of bad actors definitely have been removed. The sort of law has changed them. People getting far clearer about intent and consent and the differences and things. But that's not to say it doesn't happen. It definitely, there'll still be elements of it happening. It's just not as prevalent as it used to be.
That the law side. I mean, I don't want to labour the Wild West analogy too much, but that lawlessness, pre-GDPR and whatnot, is obviously a big factor in it. But I'm trying to think about not a solution. That's not the word, but like an alternative, I guess, alternative viewpoint, or not industry, because we resound like that's not the correct word, but let's not get into that. Open that can of worms again. What I'm trying to say is there an alternative, I guess, that is without this lawlessness, without this chaos, that moving forwards? Is there a different way of doing things that you think, yeah, that's a better way of doing things? That's what I'm sort of kind of mumbling around, but trying to find the answer to.
Yeah, we got there in the end. Yeah, I mean, to me, this all comes back to transparency, right? And this is why, like, for me personally, I talk about it a lot. As a company, we talk about it. Because if you're working with like pro lead generators, working with lead buyers that either know what they're doing or are willing to learn more about it, and they're opening up this like transparent communication, transparent methodology, transparency about what each other are doing, and they're working together as a sort of genuine marketing and sales team. This lawlessness, or this idea of fraud, and whether it's low level or high level, whatever it is sort of eradicated, because you understand that you're all working together. And there's a bigger point behind this transparency piece, which is ultimately you two are working together as a marketing and sales team, an external lead generator and a internal, or a brand buying lead, or an agency, whatever. But this whole thing revolves around a prospect, a lead, a person. And it's that person that deserves the ultimate transparency. And so really the bad actors, the fraud, everything else is being carried out on those people. It's then just being like moved between a lead buyer and a lead generator. So I think that the future for me and the removal of this lawlessness of these companies, we call them like pro lead generators and smart lead buyers. That's like an internal terminology that we use for people where we sort of understanding they're getting this concept. Why would you be anything but hugely transparent about what you do? Because what you do is actually offering genuine value to real people. And so, you don't care if anyone knows about what you do. You don't care, the tweaks you've made to your landing page or where you're driving traffic or anything, because you're adding value to people that are being generated as leads. So I think that is like the future of, removing lawlessness and lead buyers understanding of, not getting screwed over, and lead generators not getting screwed over by people not paying their bills as well. It can be simple things like, this really annoys me. I'll just tell you quickly, because it's always like a flag to me. When I see someone selling someone else's data, like someone's personal data. So imagine I've gone and filled a form in somewhere and I'm now a lead and I'm being sold by someone with a Gmail account. I mean, what the fuck is that about? Like, it seriously irritates me. So and this, I don't want to talk about Databall particularly, this is an independent podcast and everything, but I'll just quickly give you like an example. We have a single sign-on account in Databall. So what that means is you create one account, you get invited to an instance, you can sign in, and then if you get invited to any other instance, you don't have to sign up again. And we always have problems where people use Gmail accounts because we run it by the domain that an email address is associated to. So if you're like bbc.co.uk, it's, anyone at bbc.co.uk can get invited by the admin of bbc.co.uk. And that we'll have people go, oh, can I invite, James Smith at gmail.com because I'm buying some leads from him. So I'll be like, has he not got a company? No, he's just selling some data. And that's like, what's he doing with some people's personal data? Like, is it somewhere in a privacy policy that james.smith@gmail.com, sorry, James Smith, whoever you are, like, this is just like an example, has got my data? Yeah. Why has he got my data, and what on earth is he doing with it, and why is he monetizing it? It's these small little things like that add to this perception of like lawlessness and the Wild West and everything else. You've got to be a serious company that's, not trading from a Gmail address with my data if you're going to sell it. That's a really small example, but it's just, something that's just like a demonstration of what the problem is.
I think it's interesting. It comes back to saying the low barrier to entry as well. There's no accreditation required, no courses that are officially, no qualifications as far as I know that you can get, which sort of, or you're required to have before you can actually enter this, which I think, that's a very interesting point. I don't know if we answered the question really there or not. Is lead gen really the Wild West? I mean, we just sort of sketched a picture of the industry, what it was kind of like and what potentially is.
I think it isn't as much as the Wild West that it was or it used to be. I think there's still elements that need to be cleaned up, and people need to get a lot more serious about like how they're dealing with people's personal data and the transparency piece. And I think that if we stop seeing the lead generation processes like a winky wanky operator can just suddenly appear out of nowhere and sell like 1 million leads at a great deal and whatever else, and actually, needs to be a genuine company that has like a genuine brand who appreciates and values the people who become their leads and is offering them a service and whatever else, that'll like start to improve the standards of it even more.
A far more succinct sort of summary of your points than I was going to give, so I'm going to leave it on that point because that was better than I was going to come up with. That was episode 58. Is lead gen really the Wild West? Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.